I'm going to introduce Asim Siddiqui, who's the Deputy Chair of Trustees of the Muslim Institute, to talk to us about the launch of the 2026 Community Empowerment Fund.
Cool, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, good evening. Thank you, Hassan. We've spent this evening on a very hard question. Our brilliant speaker has argued that we face a crisis of belonging, that the nation state, which for more than 100 or so years worked to make people feel at home, is not doing what it was supposed to be doing. And into that space pours tribalism, mistrust, and hatred. So the Muslim Institute has been thinking about the other half of that question, not what is failing, but what can we do about it. So let me start with what we are. The Muslim Institute is one of the oldest Muslim organizations in Britain, established over half a century ago. We are a fellowship society inspired by the tradition of futua, sometimes translated as knowledgeable clubs. In the classical age of Muslim civilization, these futua were self-organizing communities that combined knowledge, ethics, and service. Artisans, scholars, and seekers of truth would gather together. They built communities around learning, humility, and service. They exchanged ideas, they supported one another, they served their neighbors. And they spoke up when the caliph of the day or the state strayed from justice. They did not wait for patronage, they did not apply for permission, they did not require a nation to tell them who they were. Futua was a form of belonging that lasted for centuries without a nation state and never needed one. The Futua, however, were never only knowledgeable clubs. They combined knowledge with service. A fellowship society that only diagnoses problems is not carrying on that tradition forward. It is just holding meetings. So Futua was essentially what we would today call a network of civil society institutions, which brings us to why we are here tonight. Some months ago, the Muslim Institute commissioned Humaira Khan of the Anisa Society to do something we thought was well overdue, to go to one of our great cities, in this case Birmingham, to listen properly to Muslim communities there, and to write down what she heard, including the voices that really make it into policy discussions and really make it into our own internal debates either. We did not commission, however, that research to sit on a shelf. We must do more than simply diagnose our problems. We must also implement and support practical solutions that benefit our communities. So tonight, the Muslim Institute is launching a £100,000 community empowerment fund that the Institute will fund. Over the next 3 to 5 years and across 3 streams: community well-being, young people, and civil liberties. Stream 1, community well-being, which is a focus on mental health, opens tonight. Grants of between £5,000 to £20,000. The deadline for applicants is the end of September. The successful applicants will be announced at our annual winter gathering at the end of November in Salisbury. And then streams 2 and 3 will follow in 2027 and 2028. This is scaling up. This is not a new idea. We started this fund in 2023 and have already invested over £25,000 in Oldham, a youth organisation of young men and boys, and in West London, a residential for young Muslim women. Modest grants, but disproportionate effects. Let me be clear who can apply. You do not need to be a registered charity. If you are an informal group with a track record, a few youth workers, a group of women who know exactly what their neighbourhoods need, apply. If you are an individual with a local organisation willing to stand behind you, then apply. We especially want to hear from female-led organisations, from groups serving refugees, and from people working in economically hard-pressed areas. The Futua were never inward-looking. They stood for what was right, not only for themselves, but for everyone around them. If our values are truly rooted in Islam, they must be of benefit for all, Muslim and non-Muslim. Over the last 50 years, the Muslim Institute has created a range of very diverse organizations, such as the Muslim Parliament of Great Britain, the Bayt al-Mal al-Islami, the Muslim Women's Institute, the Halal Food Authority. Some of those bodies no longer exist, and that's okay. The baton moves on. And much of that work is now carried out by other organizations, some of whom are in this room. My colleague Shanaz Banglawala, who's also trustee of the Muslim Institute, spoke at the Muslim Council of Britain's Mental Health Summit over the weekend. We will work with the MCB and others in supporting those tackling issues around mental health. In an age of polarization and division, we believe that organizations should pool their resources and expertise and collaborate to tackle our common challenges Muslim organizations to not just work together, but also be seen to be working together. Let me finish with a man whose name is on tonight's lecture. Ibn Rushd spent his life insisting that reason and revelation were not enemies. Truth, he argued, does not contradict truth, as our speaker has said. And the community secure in its faith has no reason to fear hard questions. He was making the case for a society confident enough to think out loud. But he did not make those cases from the safety of a library. He was a judge in Seville and Cordoba. He was a physician at court. He heard cases, he treated patients, and he wrote the commentaries that carried Aristotle back into Europe. Thinking and doing were never separate activities for him. A community can only hold its own argument if it owns the means to have it. A community that can pay its own way is one that can speak truth to power. So we are investing in our own, and we're doing it from the bottom up. The people closest to a problem generally understand it better than the people funding it. That is why we commissioned Homera's research before we opened up a single stream, so that our priorities would come from listening to communities and not from a government agenda or a funder's theory of change. What we are funding is capacity, not just activity. A grant can deliver an event, but what we want is to build the muscle behind it. Groups that can plan, deliver, account for their work, and carry on without us. If in 5 years the organizations that we back are stronger and no longer need the Muslim Institute, then that's a sign of success, not failure. A community that can stand on its own 2 feet is in a far better position to be of help and assistance to everybody, Muslim and non-Muslim. So Ibn Rushd gives us the thinking, futua gives us the doing. The Muslim Institute has been in the business of both, and tonight we are putting more funding behind the proposition that they were never separate things. Details are now live on our website, so please do apply and please tell someone who should. And in a moment, you will hear what the need actually looks like on the ground. Thank you.